Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the VENDO Velocity podcast. I'm here joined with two very special guests. We've got Carleton, Creator Marketing Manager here at VENDO, and we have Brianna Doe, founder of Verbatim, also a podcast host of her own. I'll give them the mic here in just a moment to give some more details about themselves, but I'm excited to be meeting with you all today. I'm Nicolas Martinez, SVP of Marketing here at VENDO. And if this is your first time joining for the podcast, VENDO is a full service digital growth agency. We manage over 400 brands across different marketplaces and different platforms, from Amazon to Walmart to TikTok Shop. We cover all the bases from marketing, advertising, data analytics, SEO, customer service, you name it, we do it. And we are part of a larger company called Platform. Platform is your direct to everywhere business. We have different sister companies helping brands grow both in store, in bricks and mortar, as well as digitally through VENDO. So thank you again for joining today. We have a very exciting topic. We're going to be digging into all things creator marketing. But yeah, with that note, Brianna, I would love for you to share more about your phenomenal background.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here. As you mentioned, I'm Brianna Doe, based in Phoenix, founder of Verbatims. We're a boutique influencer marketing agency, specifically specialized in B2B SaaS and D2C e-com, building influencer programs, handling speaker sourcing for SaaS events, things like that. On top of that, or outside of that, I've been in marketing for about 14 years, influencer marketing before it was cool. Started in the lifestyle and e-com space, and then transitioned into more of a hybrid model with B2B SaaS about 5 or 6 years ago. And then on top of that, I am a LinkedIn creator. So that's been going on for, I'd say, the past 3 years. And I think the interesting part about that is that it's given me a more comprehensive, 360-degree view of the creator space. And so, yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
And hi, I'm Jackie. I'm the Creator Marketing Manager here at VENDO. So I help lead all of our UGC influencer and affiliate programs across Walmart, D2C, and Amazon.
Well, thank you both for joining today. Let's get right into it. So we're going to be talking all about creator marketing, primarily influencer and affiliate marketing. We've got some fun topics lined up for y'all. We're going to be talking about how to find the right influencers and affiliates, the ideal content strategy, some different ways of thinking about performance and what that means. And, I think we bring a good variety of background here, with Bree's background more in the SaaS side, more on the LinkedIn side. And then with our background, usually typically geared towards marketplaces such as Amazon, Walmart Marketplace, and TikTok Shop. So I think there'll be a good variety of knowledge depending on whether you're directing that traffic to in-store or digital. And so on that note, let's kick it off with a deeper dive into how to find the right influencers and affiliates. So sourcing top performing creators is very nuanced depending on what your goals are, where you're trying to drive that traffic, obviously the audiences that you're trying to reach. And so Jackie, why don't you share a little bit about how we source top performing creators here at VENDO?
Yeah, so to your point, we can search for top creators many different ways, and it really just depends on the campaign objective and the goal. We use a couple of third-party platforms, just depending on running an influencer or affiliate campaign. So a tool that we use is Upfluence, which I think a lot of people are familiar with. And how we're sourcing and vetting these creators is we can filter through many different types of demographics, such as age, gender, location, and then we also want to look at the audience type. We want to be sure that the audience aligns with the product and the brand or the retailer that we're working with. And then we can even search further and look at the creators. Are they a nano? Are they a micro? Or are they a macro influencer? And then we can search by specific hashtags to find those specific niches. So if we were working with a beauty brand, for example, that are selling products on Walmart or Walmart.com, we might search for hashtag Walmart and then hashtag clean skincare. Or we could also search by a competitor's name to find creators who are already creating content within that category or for like-minded like-minded brand. And then on the Amazon side, we use platforms like Levanta that have their own networks that we can source Amazon-specific creators. And Levanta is great because they have several different types of creators, such as media buyers, deal sites, content review sites. And then we also use Helium 10, which I have been really loving lately because they just launched an influencer finder tool, which has been really, really helpful for us to source top performing affiliates. So one thing that I do love about Helium 10 is that they have a network of over 50,000 Amazon-specific creators, and you can search by different product ASINs, keywords, bios, engagement, metrics, and then you can also search by the top creator badge, which is really great for us because, of course, we want to work with the top creators on the Amazon side. And then additionally, we can also search by the upper and lower carousel count. So if you look at a product page, you can see the videos on the left-hand side in the gallery, and you'll see associates or customer videos at the upper carousel, and then you'll also be able to see them when you scroll down to the lower carousel. So we will want to work with creators who their videos are getting picked up by Amazon's algorithm and are featured on that upper and lower carousel because ultimately those videos are going to have more visibility and help drive more sales.
Wow, well, you just dropped a lot of knowledge there, Jack. So I hope everyone's keeping up because yeah, that was a lot of detailed information. And Amazon and marketplace influencer and affiliate marketing is quite a different beast of its own, right? So a lot of unique tools. Thankfully, we're living in a time right now where the evolution of influencer for marketplace has really just picked up tremendously. And so we've been fortunate to partner with a lot of these companies and platforms that have come out in the last couple of years and are really doing some great things to service that market. But Bree, with your background, being a little bit different in this space, would love to understand, how you think about sourcing top performing creators and what you look for searching for those influencers, any red flags, any green flags, if you could share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll take it from the B2B angle specifically. Jackie, I love that you didn't start with follower count, because I do think that's an area where a lot of marketers do start, right? Like, this creator has 500,000 followers, they must be a good fit. But it was like the third or fourth thing you mentioned. I just think that's worth calling out because that's something we keep in mind across any industry, right? Like even B2B SaaS. First thing I'd recommend, actually, before you even start looking for creators, is understanding what a top performing creator actually means for your campaign. Are you looking for conversions? Are you looking for leads? Are you looking for webinar registrations? Like, that's going to help you curate the list that you're going to then build, because you're going to look for creators that can actually align with those goals, right? Some creators, especially in the B2B space, are going to be more focused on like educational content. Some can drive, conversions because people come to them for product recommendations. So first things first, understand what your campaign is actually trying to drive. That's crucial. From there, another thing to mention with this space is it's a lot of thought leadership, right? You're looking for industry leaders, thought leaders. Yes, they're also going to create great content, but instead of that being, the first piece of criteria, like how aesthetically pleasing is this piece of content, it's how much trust and credibility are they building with it or have driven with it. And that in and of itself is a green flag, right? So if you go to a creator that you're considering, look at their engagement, and not just the engagement rates or how many likes or comments, but the types of conversations being driven in the comments. Are they actually driving conversation? Are they driving or sparking dialogue? Or is it a lot of great posts, like thanks for sharing, things like that? That's a great way to just get an initial gauge on how credible that person is perceived to be, or how influential they are in their space. Another green flag is audience demographics, which we all know. Jackie, you alluded to this as well. When you're building out your campaign, like I said, if you go back to how you're defining success, that's also going to be an indication of who you're trying to target. Does this creator that you're considering actually align with your ICP? Do they speak to the decision makers? Do they speak to the people that will champion your brand? Are they the champion of your brand? Understanding who they're speaking to outside of just the flashy metrics is another thing that's going to be crucial. I think, it's easy to look at like an e-com brand that does influencer marketing and think, I run a tech company, I'll just do the same thing. Like I'll just host a pop-up or, throw $5,000 at 5 different creators and see what sticks. But you have to be a lot more intentional in a different way in this space because it's really easy to burn bridges or to leave a bad taste in people's mouths, right? Especially when you're thinking about, this isn't somebody deciding if they're going to buy a product from, for themselves or for their family. It's how are they going to be able to push this down the line up to like their CEO to get approval to purchase this product for their company. So that all just ties back to making sure that they're an actual industry leader and thought leader in this space, not somebody who just creates content to create content. And one more thing I will add too, this is not just LinkedIn. I think that's one thing that's also, people just think that's the case. You can only look on LinkedIn for B2B influencers. We're doing a lot of work on YouTube, a lot of work on Instagram, with newsletters, with podcasts. And so you can still think of your campaign or your activation as multi-channel. It's just going to be different creators that you work with.
Yeah, really, really interesting to think about how you approach it differently too for B2B, right? I think that's another beast of its own. And here we spend much time on the B2B angle, although for our own podcast, of course, we're thinking about that. So it was cool to meet a real life LinkedIn influencer like yourself, because that's those are hard to find. But I know that similar to kind of how marketplace influencer marketing has evolved greatly, LinkedIn is kind of right behind it in terms of that evolution. So a lot more to come there, and I'm sure those who are watching today should continue to follow you to keep up to speed with that. But let's talk a little bit about, okay, so this is how we're going to this is what we're going to be thinking about when we're looking for the right influencers and affiliates, right? These are some of the different ways that we go about finding them, different ways we go about thinking about who we should be working with. But once you actually find that talent, what are some tips for outreach, right? What are some tips for, one, getting their attention so that they, are interested or want to learn more at least, and break through that clutter. There's so much automation nowadays too. I mean, I'm not even an influencer, but I have a Instagram, and I get emails for sampling and all kinds of stuff, and it's just crazy. So I imagine the actual influencers are getting tons of that. But yeah, so what are some tips to break through the noise, and then once you break through that noise, actually build that creator relationship? Bri, if you want to answer that one.
Yeah, first thing I'll say is get to the point in your message, whether it's an email, a DM, commenting on their posts. Make sure you're communicating what it is that you're trying to accomplish with them, what it is that you want. To be blunt, like if you just get to the point, I think to your point, Nicolas, there is a lot of, outside of spam emails, right? You're just getting a lot of requests for collaborations and activations. A lot of creators we work with are not full-time creators. They have full-time jobs, and so they have even less time to be combing through emails. So the more information you can provide to them up front, the better. It's okay if you are negotiating budget with them. It's okay if you want to talk through details of the collaboration on a call, but at least communicate what it is that you're trying to accomplish and as a brand by working with them. I would also say don't be afraid to follow up. It's like I just said, not all of them are full-time creators, and even those that are getting inundated with requests. So don't be afraid to follow up. They might not have seen the email. Don't be discouraged by that either. And then I would also say one thing to consider as well is the way you're reaching out, right? If your emails aren't getting read or responded to, do they have an agent or a manager? Like, have you looked at if they have a website? Do they have a contact form? Is there management contact information on there? Like finding creative ways to get a hold of them is also important, and it's important to think outside the box with that. And if all else fails, start engaging with their content as well, especially on platforms where maybe they get less engagements, they're more likely to see it. Just engaging with them, starting conversation, letting them know that you've sent them a DM or an email. This is a very relational industry, right? It's not transactional, or it shouldn't be transactional. You're working with humans, so just communicate with them.
Yeah, and just to add on to that too, we are humans, and I always tell my team that we should be very personable when we reach out, and we don't want to sound like a robot or it's, a mass email. And I always like to, add in, maybe we saw a specific post that we really engaged with or that we really liked, so that feels like we are really looking at their content and we are connecting with them. And I always also like to include some sort of CTA, like our campaign is happening, very soon. We want a response by the end of the week, because then it creates a sense of urgency, and hopefully that creator is more likely to respond, knowing that we are moving pretty quickly with this campaign, and we do need an answer.
Yeah, great tips all around. And one question that I think comes up sometimes, and Bree, I'd be curious to get your thoughts on this. Is you spoke about being very clear, very concise in your outreach emails. Would you say that like really getting straight to the point in terms of like, this is our budget, this is the deliverables? Like, do you usually recommend doing that in the very first email, or do you sometimes keep it a little bit more loose and then after get into those types of details?
Yeah, that's a good question. Glad you're clarifying. I think it largely depends on the type of activation. To Jackie's point, the timeline. Like if it's Tuesday, you're looking to lock this in by Friday end of day, the more information you can provide up front, the better. But I would say gauge it like based on the creator and their content and how they show up online. Like if you have that information, and let's say the campaign is very rigid, it is only going to be 2 posts with this creator, 3 posts with this one, or whatever the case may be. It doesn't hurt to communicate that information. You can still communicate it in a personable way. I love that you pointed that out. But it's okay to just, open it up with something really nice, really engaging, and then say, also here are the activation details, just like a quick overview. Let me know if you have questions, something like that. But all that to say, if you don't have the budget locked in, if you are flexible on the deliverables and you want it to be more of a collaboration where you outline those details together and finalize them, communicate that. Like the level of detail that you can share, that's what I would put in the email. And if it's starting to feel too stale or too generic, just take some of those details out.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's kind of the challenge, is like, yes, we want to be personable, we want to be, non-transactionable, but then at the same time, sometimes you've got to cut to the chase, and you gotta get some of those finer details in there. So balancing, that personableness and but also, accomplishing being efficient, I guess you could call it, is kind of the sweet spot that we aim for. So
yeah. I think if this helps too, to get really tactical, think of it as a sandwich. So first piece of the email or DM, super nice, super bubbly, like engaging, whatever your normal tone is. In the middle is where I just get kind of clinical and say, by the way, here are the details, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, and then finish up with, we would love to work with you, really love your content, and just a huge fan of what you're building, or whatever, something like that. Make sure it's genuine, and then end it with just a nice salutation.
Excellent. Well, hopefully there were some actionable tips there for everybody. But let's pivot a little bit into content strategy. Content strategy obviously can vary depending on your different goals. I know earlier we were talking about different goals, whether it's B2B, D2C, etc. Jackie, how do you build a program that aligns with overall business goals? When are you thinking about whether to optimize for sales, for impressions, or for something else?
Yeah, that's a good question. So again, I really think it comes back to the campaign objective and goals. Is it to drive sales, or is it for brand awareness? I would say on my team, we don't do a ton of brand awareness campaigns. It's primarily focused on sales and conversions. So for Amazon specific content, we've seen sort of the how-to or product review types of content perform really well. And then also some testimonial style videos. And then also, we really want to incorporate some of those like frequently asked questions or product returns as talking points, because ultimately those customers may see those videos or go to the product page and look at some of like the bad reviews or anything like that, and they might pass on the product. So if we can work with our affiliates to include that in their content when they're posting on Amazon, that's really great, because our Amazon affiliate programs are really focused on driving a sale and conversions. And then also for some of our other more influencer campaigns, when it comes to possibly a product launch on Walmart or Walmart.com, Our content strategy is really to focus on the specific product, how it benefits the consumer. And then also we see a lot of in-store content perform really well for us. So we'll work with the creator to go into the store for the product launch. And we always make sure that whenever we do onboard a new brand during that process, we'll ask the brand, what kinds of content has performed really well for you guys in the past. So that kind of gives us some ideas. And then when we are working with the affiliate or the influencer, we also want to give them some sort of creative freedom because they know their audience the best. They know what converts. So there is kind of that line with like giving them the creative freedom, but then also making sure that we have the brand guidelines, the brand guardrails, how to speak about the product, what not to say. So I think just kind of a joined relationship with some of the affiliates or influencers, and then making sure that we have the product information, the brand knowledge to come up with that content that we think is going to convert the best.
Yeah, excellent. It's definitely going back to kind of the types of influencers and affiliates we work with a lot of the time here at Vendo. It is such a wide array of the types, right? It is the PR publishers, the review sites, the listicles, the editorials, right? And that's very different in how the strategy is being developed and how it's being received and where it's being received. So a lot of times this content that does drive sales to Amazon and Walmart and so on, it's being found, after a Google search or nowadays a ChatGPT search, right? So I think, it's good to be thinking about how different that type of content strategy is versus, of course, like a more traditional Instagram, type content strategy that here at Vendo we typically see more success with for brand awareness goals. But Bri, we've got a comment here in the chat that I think would be well suited to you. So I'm just going to read it out loud here. Can we speak to how content creators who also have corporate roles can utilize LinkedIn for brand outreach and still showcase skills for career development or advancement, rather?
I think I'm a little curious on what they mean by brand outreach. Like if I take it really straightforward, I'm assuming they mean like reaching out to brands for brand partnerships. Is that how you two are reading it?
That's how I was interpreting, I think.
Okay. Well, so I think we'll separate the question. So for utilizing LinkedIn for brand outreach, so reaching out to brands that you're interested in working with, one, I would build a list of the kinds of brands that you want to work with and then get specific about, the names themselves. From there, I would do two things. I would start occasionally creating content that incorporates some of those brands in really subtle or, impactful ways, and tag them in the content as well. That's a good way to get on their radar, especially for the folks that are like managing the LinkedIn account. So that's the first thing I would do. I would also then go look at the LinkedIn company page. It's one of the best things about LinkedIn is that you can see who works at the company, right? And so start connecting with the head of influencer marketing, the influencer marketing manager, the head of social, head of content, maybe even like a head of growth or growth marketing manager, folks that work in influencer marketing or influencer adjacent roles within the company. That's the best way to start building those relationships. And then you can just reach out to them directly as well. Hey, my name's Brianna, huge fan of what you're building at XYZ. And I've been using, your product to help me perform better at work, fill in the blank. Would love to chat about a potential partnership if you're currently looking to build out an influencer program or run influencer campaigns, something like that. Obviously, rephrase it in a way that makes sense to you, but that's what I would do with the brand outreach piece. When it comes to still showcasing your skills for career advancements, that's what I was alluding to actually when I said, occasionally reference brands or tag brands in the content. The rest of your content can be focused around what you're learning at work, how you're growing as an employee or as a manager, what you're learning about leadership. You can balance both. The way I typically tell creators to think about it is that you want to have 3 to 4 content pillars, which are like 3 to 4 umbrella topics that you speak about online. So you don't have to limit yourself to just talking about how you're growing in your career or just talking about tools that you use for work, right? You can have these multiple pillars that you use to create a more well-rounded or holistic brand.
Excellent. A lot of helpful information there. And, I think it also depends on, how aggressive you want to be with that brand outreach, right? Because I think naturally LinkedIn can be a place where, you're kind of on the same wavelength when you're posting about, different information, as well as when you're posting kind of on behalf of your corporate role, right? It typically can go kind of hand in hand, as long as there's that overlap with your corporate role, of course, and the content that you're creating. It kind of becomes one and the same. But yeah, okay, great. So just kind of getting back a little bit more to the kind of content conversion topic here. Jackie, I think you gave some great information on, how we think about optimizing for sales goals. In your world, Bree, what does converting content look like, right? Whether it's for clicks, impressions, sales, how are you thinking about what that content looks like?
Yeah, I would say especially over the last couple of years, it's typically, like Jackie mentioned, it's been less on the brand awareness play, unless it's, a large or later stage company. It's typically been one of 3 or 4 different KPIs or metrics: direct conversions, lead generation. I would kind of tie this into like webinar registrations or event registrations, or like lead magnet downloads and engagement. So if you want to break it down to 2, it's conversions or it's leads. Those are typically what we're optimizing for. So the first thing I always do is we need to back into how long we have for the campaign. And sometimes you look at the budget first. Sometimes you just look at how long the campaign itself is going to be run. For example, if you're, like I used the example earlier, if you're preparing for a webinar, let's say you're 2 months out, you have 2 months to promote the webinar. If it's a new report that your company just released that you want to promote for the next month, you have a month to promote the report, if that makes sense. So backing into how long you have first, and then that will help you figure out which creators or which types of creators you want to work with. But that's always where I start: budget, duration of a campaign, and then setting up the creators that you do work with for success by giving them a really detailed campaign brief, setting them up with assets, anything they need to promote the event, the lead magnet, or if it's just more of a general, brand play, giving them the opportunity to experience the product, to use the product for more than a week, like more than 2 weeks. Give them time to actually integrate it into their tech stack. You're going to start getting more and more creative and authentic content.
Yeah, and on that note of creative briefs, I think you pointed out some good items to be thinking about. Anything else that you're thinking about on what to include, what to avoid, or maybe even in the contractual, more legal language, what you want to have in there?
Yeah, a couple things I would recommend putting in the contract. Also, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know if I need to say that, but some things that I'd recommend including, or that we include, is language around pods, engagement pods. So for context, for those that aren't aware, an engagement pod is typically like a community that you pay for access to, so that when you have a post go live, they send like a bunch of, it could be fake accounts, could be real accounts, but they send a bunch of people to go engage with it. The problem is that if you're doing that on a very large scale, you're manufacturing the engagement. So the results that the brand is going to see might not be the audience demographic they expected. It might not actually lead to leads or conversions. It probably won't. So that's important. So I put that in the contract, language around not using pods. If they are using pods and we find out, ways that we can basically exit or terminate the contract. Also, language around competitors. The exclusivity clause is not super common in B2B right now, because you do typically pay more to a creator if you want exclusive rights. But just messaging or language around not posting about a competitor within 7 days or 14 days. The last thing you want is to confuse the creator's audience, right? They post about your brand one day, your competitor 2 days later. They don't know who to work with, so they don't buy either product, right? So that's typically what I recommend. And for the campaign brief, language around like the product features, ways you'd like them to discuss the product, language you'd like them to avoid. You never want to dictate what they write or what they create, but you do want to give them the guidelines, the parameters, so that they know how to speak about your brand online. That also just helps with less feedback loops. And in my opinion, it makes a more collaborative and more enjoyable partnership for both parties, because you're not going back and forth on content.
Yeah, and I think on the Vendo side, a lot of the campaigns that we're running are kind of evolving around certain key moments. So we're often, setting up the campaigns and the creative briefs to focus on those key moments and really kind of drive excitement and anticipation for that moment, right? I think Amazon Prime Day, right, as a big one that we just came out of. Different beast there too. But Jackie, let's pivot a little bit to influencer and affiliate performance and how we think about really just encouraging more performance, encouraging more engagement from affiliates, right? You might get their attention and get a little bit of traffic and sales coming in, but how do you kind of keep that ball rolling, keep them excited?
Yeah, so I would first say that the commission structure is really important, especially in the beginning phases of building an affiliate program. So when we onboard a new brand, we always recommend starting at a higher commission rate, which I know sounds a little bit scary sometimes, but there specific categories like supplements, for example, are very competitive. And sometimes we see commission rates at 40% or higher. So if all of these affiliates are getting reached out to by several different brands, like we want to stand out. So I recommend starting with a higher commission structure. This way we'll attract more affiliates as we're building and scaling the program within, 1 to 3 months. Then once we start seeing some data come in, we understand who are the top 10 or 20 affiliates that are driving the most sales and conversions and which products are converting the best. Then we can sort of start a tiered commission structure. So maybe we keep the top 10 affiliates at that 30 or 40%, and then we drop commission structure or the commission for everybody else. So that way we can, really work and build that relationship with some of our top affiliates. Another thing that we've been doing and testing into is these loyalty bonuses. We tested into this for Amazon Prime Day for the month of July. So for our top affiliates, we are giving them a $5 bonus for every $50 that they sell. And we've been seeing a lot of great success with this as well, because again, it's incentivizing them to sell more product, produce more content. So I would say in terms of performance, I think the commission structure is really important to start with.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see too how that's evolved, right? With TikTok Shop especially. TikTok Shop is kind of the home to a lot of these types of these programs recently. You look at a brand like Goalie that kind of just made the news recently in the industry for how incredibly compelling their program's been. I think, you can win international trips, you can win G-Wagons, all kinds of things. So it's getting pretty wild out there with some of these incentives, but you know what? It works. It gets people's attention, and here we are talking about it. So I guess they're doing it right. But so we're talking about, how the commission structure, how the incentives can drive more engagement from the creators, drive more interest, really start to kind of build, a longer term relationship. And I do want to round back to that topic in just a little bit. But actually kind of diving deeper into the KPIs, right? Obviously sales conversions are important. But what are some of the other KPIs, Jackie, that you're looking at when you're reporting on the performance of a campaign?
Yeah, so for our brands, we actually put together a dashboard that we share on a bi-weekly and a monthly basis. And we are looking at all of these metrics against some of the benchmarks that we put in place before we even begin the program. So what are some of these metrics? It's clicks, the detailed page views, the conversions, the add to carts, the revenue, which would be the direct sales, and then also commission. We're also tracking indirect sales, which was kind of the brand halo effect from the program. So maybe a customer clicked on the affiliate link, but didn't end up purchasing that product, but they purchased a different product. So we want to track all of that data. And then we also track every single piece of content that comes in. So in order to receive a sample in our program, we want to make sure that whoever we're sending samples to, those affiliates are going to post the content. So we'll follow up with them. And then we also want to ask them of how the videos or the content is performing. And then we'll share all of this information with our brands. And then we'll, take it a step further to help strategize any plans moving forward. So maybe we want to remove some of the products from our program that aren't performing well. Maybe we're looking at some of the top affiliates that are performing well and, change their commission structures. But I would say all of that data is what we're typically looking at and tracking in our affiliate programs.
Yeah, lots of data to be looking at, right? And that's also going back to kind of the uniqueness of a marketplace. There's an algorithm that you're greasing up, as we like to say, right? As opposed to driving to a D2C site or a landing page where the directly attributable sale is kind of the end of the road in certain ways, unless you're doing some new marketing. So really unique. And Brie, how are you thinking about measurement and KPIs? And also on that note, what are you looking for in terms of measurement and KPIs and how those contribute to considering, whether a long-term partnership makes sense or not?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one thing to remember is that we're all, to some extent, as creators, kind of beholden to the algorithm, right? And so when you work with creator, let's say for a one-off post, you're not necessarily going to see the results in that post if it was an off day, if they need to tweak the content a bit. So with that in mind, I think it's always best to do more of a bundle, even if it's not a super long-term partnership, right? So 3 posts, 4 posts, something that gives you enough time to test out different content with them, especially if the KPIs and metrics you're tracking are directly related to sales. If it's less of a long-term play in the sense that you need to drive results, you need to drive conversions, that means you need to give the creators time to prime their audience, essentially warm them up to the product itself, especially if they haven't been introduced to it before by this creator. And so that's the first thing that I actually talk to clients about. Is you're probably not going to see the results you're looking for if you have them do one post promoting a webinar, if you have them do one post promoting your new product launch or the new product feature. It's different if you are optimizing for, let's say, brand awareness, right? In that case, somebody alluded to it in the comments, you can do more of a mass awareness play where you just work with a bunch of creators maybe once to drive just a ton of impressions and a ton of reach and engagement, as opposed to something where you're trying to build credibility with an audience that isn't aware of you before the creators started posting. And so keeping that in mind when you're building out the partnerships themselves and the activations is really important.
Yeah, and I'd love to double click into that a little bit more, because I know that this is a hot topic, right? Where should you be kind of thinking about long-term partnerships right away versus one-offs? Are you always thinking about kind of ideally the end goal would be a long-term partnership? I guess how do you approach that if differently?
Yeah, the short answer is it depends, right? If a brand is just testing this out for the first time, or if they are trying to promote a specific event or a specific product launch or a new set of features, we're not going to look at a long-term partnership. It's just not what they're building the campaigns around, or they're not looking to build an entire influencer program, and that's totally okay. There are times, however, when a brand will say, we're ready to start really working with creators, really pouring into the influencer marketing channel, in which case I would recommend looking at longer term partnerships, as the end goal. The first 3, 6, 9 months, whatever the case may be, partnering with different types of creators to get a feel for what works and what doesn't, which audiences are resonating with the content and with, the brand promotion and which aren't, and then moving into longer term partnerships with creators that are a good fit. But it really does just depend on the brand itself, what their short and long-term goals are, and why they're approaching this channel in the first place.
Yeah, and on that note too, just one follow-up question here that I think also comes up is, are you thinking about the long-term partnership? How do I phrase this? How are you judging that initial engagement with a creator, right? So are your benchmarks different in terms of how you're looking at evaluating the success? So let's say it is a brand that wants to do a long-term partnership, right? That first creator's post, the bar a little bit lower than maybe the second or the third post, or is there different goals in terms of the KPIs that you're looking for? Okay, this creator, maybe we didn't get a positive return on investment in that first post, but how do you decide whether you're going to try again or try a third time, right? And allow them to, as you said earlier, kind of prime their audience a little bit more.
Well, what I would say is if you're not willing, whether that's because of budget or you're not sure about the creator or whatever, if you're not willing to commit to at least 3 posts with them, they're probably not a creator you should be working with. If it's a budget issue, you probably shouldn't be testing out influencer marketing at this point. Wait until you have more budget and more leeway. And what I would always recommend, like, getting those 3 posts locked in up front, regardless of how the first one performs. You're doing the second and the third, unless it turns into some sort of, breaking of like a contract clause. But if it's just because of the performance of the first post, the goal is to then look back at the results of the posts as a whole to see what performed and what didn't, and then make a decision based off of that, as opposed to only having to look at that one post to decide.
Yeah. And so that's often the challenge too, because if you have a brand that, or a company that is really like, hey, I just have budget for this one campaign, and that campaign only allows you to work with somebody for one post, it does become kind of a challenge to see the long-term results of that partnership, right?
Sure, but that also goes back to what I was saying earlier. If you are just looking to do one campaign, that's a different conversation than if you're looking to build out more of a long-term program. Like, because that happens all the time. A brand, they see other brands doing influencer marketing, they want to test it out, or they've been wanting to test it, and now they have budget to test it out with a few curators. That's also fine. Like, you do not have to optimize your campaign to lead to longer term partnerships. If you are, that's when I recommend, bundles for an activation. If you're just looking to test it out, and promote this new launch or this event you have coming up or whatever the case may be, that's also okay. But that's what you need to know as a company and like as a leadership team before you engage with the influencers.
100%. Well, this has been really jam-packed with a lot of information. I hope everybody's been enjoying. Thank you, everybody that participated in the comments section and left questions in there. I think there's maybe one question that we can answer after in the chat. But any last call outs, Bree, Jackie?
No, I feel like I've learned a lot, especially about the marketplace, sector as well. So this has been fun.
Yeah, this has been really fun.
Yeah.
It's like we got one more question here coming in. Let's see here. What's something you've learned or done in that creative space that you're especially proud of? Maybe something that wouldn't have been possible in the retail world. Bree or Jackie, any thoughts on that one?
Jackie, you want to take that one?
Yeah. Let's see. I think in general, especially on the affiliate side, one thing that I've been most proud of is the last couple of months with some of our newer brands, we've went above and beyond some of our benchmarks in terms of performance. And that has been really exciting because we've implemented a lot of new processes and strategy into our program. So to see our brands performing so well, and some of our brands have hit 27% of their sales coming from affiliates for their Amazon business. So that was really an exciting thing that has happened on the affiliate side for some of my clients.
Yeah, and I think if I'm understanding the correct question correctly, thinking about what's something we've done in the marketplace space that wouldn't have been possible in retail, because we do run digital to in-store campaigns as well. The attribution tracking is a huge difference. When we're running digital affiliate campaigns, the directly attributable sales, that's the number one KPI that we look at. When we're running digital to in-store activations, yes, there are tools and ways to directly attribute sales, post-purchase rebate platforms where you upload your receipt after you check out, and that's how you track. But it's harder to kind of see that through. People still purchase because of the content, and yet they're not uploading their receipt. So that's just been a big difference that we've noticed, and why when we're approaching kind of those digital to in-store and into retail campaigns, we are valuing brand awareness more greatly, and we are looking at lifts in total sales for that retailer and trying to draw a line to that, right? Trying to draw that correlation, because you can often see a big lift in baseline that you have to assume is coming from these efforts, as long as you're controlling those variables. So thank you for that question, Pasha. Hopefully that was a helpful answer. Bree, some last words. Where can people find you? If they want to reach out, how do they get in touch?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I feel like I basically live on there. So you can find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out, send me a connection request. Other than that, we are verbatim.com, briannadoe.com if you're interested in my book that's coming out. That's really it.
All right, excellent. I don't know how you do it all, Brie. You're the podcast, the book, the speaking, the agency.
It's a lot.
Very impressive. Very impressive. Well, thank you everybody for joining today. Hope you all are going away with some learning lessons here, some actionable golden nuggets, as I like to call them. Please subscribe. We go live every other Tuesday, usually at 9 a.m. here on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube, and then we publish all of our live streams as podcasts to YouTube, to Apple, to Spotify, and to SoundCloud. So please, wherever you listen to podcasts, subscribe there. We also have a newsletter that you can sign up for on our website. We put out marketplace news every other week. We put out case studies and blogs every other week. We're 150-person team covering all different areas of digital. So a lot of great information to continue to learn. And if you want to learn more about how we approach creator marketing, we have case studies and other content as well. So, and you're welcome to reach out to Jackie or I also on LinkedIn. So on that note, we'll see you in a couple weeks, and have a great rest of your week, everyone.